to take a look at something called cookies, and you've probably heard of cookies before, not the kind you eat, obviously, but in the context of computing and especially the internet, you've probably at least seen the word cookies, and maybe you have an awareness that somehow they are connected with advertising or privacy or something. And a lot of times, because of the way they've been used by advertisers online, cookies get a bad rap. So today we're going to learn about cookies, and I think what you'll see is that cookies aren't necessarily bad in particular, but they can be used for good or evil, just like most of the things we learn in programming. So let's get into it. So what's a cookie? A cookie is really a very simple thing. A cookie is just a very simple little text file that is saved on your computer. It's saved in your web browser by a website, and you can revoke permission for websites to save cookies on your computer, but I can tell you that so many websites rely on cookies for things like logging in and remembering your preferences and things like that, that your experience, if you turn off cookies, will be probably pretty diminished. So what are cookies used for specifically? They're used for what's called session management. And a session is most often used for maintaining a login when you're on a website. So if you go to a website, let's say your banking website, and you log in and you go from page to page on that website, it remembers who you are. It remembers that you logged in, that you entered your password. You don't have to enter your password on each individual site. That's because it's remembering your session. And when you first go to a website, the first page you hit on that website establishes what's called a session. And when you log in, your login data is saved in a cookie on your computer, what's called a session cookie, that lasts as long as you're in that site or until you log out or until you close your browser window. So that's what a session is, and session management is done using cookies. So when you log in, it actually stores a little cookie on your computer that says, hey, this person is who they say they are, they logged in, and now when you go from page to page, you don't have to remind it who you are or log in again or anything like that. Another thing cookies are often used for is personalization. And personalization can be anything from saving your favorite color scheme for a website to remembering who you are on Amazon.com, so that Amazon can say, hey, last time you ordered this bike from Amazon.com, this time maybe you want to order some a bike rack or some new tires or maybe a pump for your bike. So that's how Amazon does things that seem a little creepy sometimes, but allow you to purchase things that are related to things that you've bought in the past, or maybe even things that you've looked at in the past. So the other thing that cookies are often used for, and this is this sort of gray area when it comes to privacy and good or evil, is tracking user behavior. And the way that works is if I go to a website that serves advertising, then that advertiser, because they are supplying the ad from their website, and this sort of happens in a way that doesn't let users know what's going on, but because that ad is coming from a different website, that ad has the ability to place a cookie on my computer. So it knows that maybe I am looking at a shoe store online, and it may even be able to determine what kind of shoes I'm looking for or something like that. So that when I go to a different website, that advertiser might be able to show me ads that are related to the shoes I was looking at, for example. So cookies can be used in ways that feel a little creepy, and sometimes it does feel like your computer knows a little bit too much about your behavior. But if you understand how it works with cookies and with sessions and advertising, it allows you to be a smart consumer. And you can see that most of the time, while it feels like an invasion of privacy, it's not really dangerous in any way. Cookies can't access your credit card. They can't access your personal information. In fact, cookies really can only store information that you give to a website. And so if you're careful about what you give to a website, then you should be pretty safe when it comes to cookies. Some of the key characteristics that cookies have that you need to remember about them is that number one, they're very small text files. They're just plain text. They are limited to 4K in size, which is, when it comes down to it, depending on the characters you use and that sort of thing, about 3,000 characters, maybe a little bit more, depending on a variety of different factors. But 3,000 characters really isn't much. If you've used X, or formerly known as Twitter, then you know kind of what 180 characters looks like, and that's pretty short. So about 20 times that length you can store, and sometimes that seems like a lot, and sometimes that's not really enough. So what we're talking about typically is small things like user IDs or email addresses or login information, a pointer that points to a theme on the website or some other kind of preference. Those are the kind of things that you typically store in cookies. Cookies store information in key value pairs, and we just finished talking about JSON in the last unit, but which also uses key value pairs. The difference between these cookies and JSON is that the key and the value are stored, they're all strings, and so there aren't individual quotes around the key and the value in each pair. Usually a cookie is associated with a specific domain and path. On a website, you can allow a cookie to be accessed anywhere in that domain and even shared between subdomains in that domain. You can also limit or not limit the path that the cookie is available in. So if you have a specific folder in your website and you only want cookies to be active in that folder or in that path, then you can also limit that. It's good to remember that cookies are stored in plain text. They are not encrypted, so they are not secure. So you never ever want to store any sensitive information in a cookie. You never want to store a password or username in a cookie. You want to be really careful about the information that you store in those cookies, not because they can be stolen by their website, but because anybody else who has access to that computer has access to read those cookies. So that's the reason why you need to be careful, but cookies are not considered secure for any reason at all. And the last thing that you need to understand is that cookies are sent back and forth with every request to the server. So every time your browser sends a request to the server, it sends the cookies with that request. When the server sends the request back, those cookies make that round trip. So every time you send something back and forth to a server, those cookies are sent. And that is another reason why you want to make sure that you're using a secure website, because as those cookies are sent back and forth, they are only as encrypted as your connection to that website is. So if you're using HTTP instead of HTTPS, it's risky with your cookies depending on the information. But like I said, you shouldn't be storing anything very secure in cookies anyway. Cookies, finally, use an expiration date to manage lifespan. There is no real delete cookie command in JavaScript. Instead, what we typically do if we want to delete a cookie is we set the expiration date for that cookie to any date and time in the past, and then it just goes away. So that is how cookies and their lifespan is managed. It's through expiration dates, not through deletion. So what does a cookie look like? A cookie looks like this. In its most simple form, the only thing that's required is the key and value pair. So you can see document.cookie equals, and then there's a string there that includes username equals John Doe and a semicolon. If I want to, I can add more than one cookie there, and the attributes of that cookie, the expiration date, and so on are also stored in key value pairs as well. So if I want to, I can set up a cookie like this, where document cookie equals a string of different key and value pairs. I can also do something like this, where I set the cookie to expire on a certain date and time. And that is the proper format for the date and time when you're setting an expiration for a cookie. So that is what a cookie looks like. So the cookie name would be here. The cookie value would be there. And then this part is the expiration date, or when the cookie expires. By the way, if you leave the expiration date off when you create the cookie, then the cookie is deleted by default when the browser closes. So leaving the date off sets that cookie to be a session cookie, and it only lives while the browser window is open, and then at that time it's deleted.